All right, it's about time. Sometimes waiting for that getter to pick up, boy. All righty. We're just going to do a nice little freewheeling show today. All right, let's get this party started, folks. Share, share, share. All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the video if you like the video and share it far and wide as always. All right. I don't know if you noticed, but I was having a little issue with the Public Polling Project's page. It's back up and going now. We tried to do some updates on a few things to fix the percentage thing. It's not showing. Like the actual progress bar is showing, but the percentage thing in total is not showing. So that's got to get that's been a problem for like a week. That's got to get fixed ASAP. But I just basically said hands off while I'm doing the show. All right, this show is going to be like a freewheeling show. All right, because there are things I want to talk about, of course, but I'm going to look at your comments throughout the show and see, because this is a very, very confusing time. It is now September 20th. September 20th, the 16 and 20, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were both leading, and they were leading pretty considerably. There was a consensus among certain polls, most polls, and then there was the rest of us, all right? And the rest of us who polled more accurately. In about a week's time, if you go back in a time machine to 2016, in about a week's time, you will see some surveys diverge from the consensus and some really weird stuff happening. The Google consumer surveys will be turned off by October 3rd. Why? Because at the end of October, they started to show some pretty large Trump leads in some weird states. Like Florida at that time was thought to be Clinton's state to lose, which was ridiculous and always ridiculous. But other pollsters were showing considerable leads for Hillary Clinton. That was the one state where Trump would end up with a tiny little average lead on RCP, and that is because of a last-minute poll by Ann Seltzer. All right, the other polls, Robert and I went over one the other day. Tony Boner from Target Fart. This is a guy who went on MSNBC. This is a guy who MSNBC and other media outlets were pushing, because him and his so-called high-quality surveys were showing that 28% of Republicans in the state of Florida were voting for Hillary Clinton among those who voted early. That is, of course, nuts. And Republicans always vote early. There is not... Florida's a funny state where Republicans used to vote more in absentee ballot. Now they have, of course, split up, and it would be basically... It used to be Republicans by absentee ballot, Democrats in person early, then Republicans on election day. And if Republicans had a big enough election day turnout, then they would win the state. But it was always razor thin. That's how Florida used to work. It is not like that anymore. But the bottom line is, it never was the case that like it is in some other states, like Arizona, where the early votes by mail are much less partisan on the Republican side than the election day vote or other voting methods. All right. Anyway, going back to the way that this is going is really kind of predictable, and it's sad. The difference is that we have 2 elections under our belt now, and people should automatically be able to identify this stuff when it happens. And the media should be more responsible in how they report this stuff, but they're not. And the pollsters for the media should be doing articles about it, and they're not. All right. I'm going to give you a perfect example of how disgusting they could be. He was forced to respond to my tweet yesterday. Now he's going to claim it was his replies. It wasn't his replies. It was my thread that forced him to respond because other pollsters jumped on and said they agreed with me. That's what happened yesterday. All right. So I'm going to show you. Let's just get right into it. All right. Because we're going to see this consensus on that side. And apparently the game this year is anyone else who's not in that consensus is going to be dubbed low quality garbage. It's just right wing polls that are showing this competitive. Harris is running away with this stuff. And of course, that is not even remotely close to being true. And in fact, if you talk to both campaigns, the Trump campaign, I'm just going to be real clear with you. The Trump campaign still feels that she's about to come off her high again. And the race was about to return to where it was pre-debate and already has begun. And they actually think they feel pretty good about the undecideds because we all were wrong about who the undecideds were going into the debate. I don't agree with the entire assessment. You guys know how I feel about it. Trump made a mistake having that debate because he allowed the media and the polls to do what they're doing now. And the bottom line is he was on his trajectory to not only be leading, but to be leading by like having the not even, I don't want to say comfortably, but having the consensus showing that he is leading. Now it's just like the New York Times, which I'm going to show you in a second because they're playing games. And it's even Fox News, their national poll is Harris +2, but compared to what they were for Biden, it's unbelievable. And in the battleground states, Trump is actually up. At this point in 2020, Fox News was publishing polls showing Biden 12 points ahead in the state of Arizona. He was up in Ohio by 5 points in the Fox News poll. So we are in a very different race for sure. All right. But the difference is the media is not reflecting that. They're not. They're just carrying on in their alternative universe. And that's because there aren't enough of us to keep them honest until we have a rare moment like the one I'm going to show you. All right. So, where we're at here is that, you have the New York Times, maybe Fox here and there. There's a couple others that are joining, the world we were talking about on Wednesday. There's 2 worlds. There's the one that's showing Harris winning this thing by ridiculous and unbelievable margins. And then there's the other world that is actually showing, like Emerson, by the way, that was a legitimate, credible series of battleground polls that came out earlier this week, a couple of days ago. And it showed Trump up in some, Trump down in some, Harris up in some, Harris down in some. Believable margins. Okay. 5 points in the state of Pennsylvania is not a believable margin. The state of Pennsylvania will be decided by 2 points or less in the most likely scenario. Okay. And then that's just a reality. I don't think that would have been the reality if Donald Trump would have not done the debate, but it's the reality now. Hey, buddy. I'm on. Sorry. Daddy's working. Madam Producer, you are not doing your job at all. Can I get it? Wait, 1 second. Can I get a kiss real quick? I love you and I want. Oh, he's in a great mood today. But Daddy's working. Look, there are people. Look, go race your mommy. Go, 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 go. There are people in the camera and they're waiting for Dad. I'm sorry, guys. He just barged in. He's homesick. And he just barged in. All right. Sorry, guys. All right. What are you going to do? Madam Producer, next time, we're going to have a meeting about your performance. Okay.
You think you're talking to?
You're going to have to.
Don't make me cut your screen.
Come in the boss's office and we're going to have a discussion about your performance during the show. This is now the second time. This is the second time this has happened. I'm not sure they caught the other. Oh, no. During Sean Parnell's show, it also happened. All right. Folks, they love it. They love it. Otherwise, I would have to get out of here. You're messing up my hair. Look what you did.
Good.
Look what you have done. I now look like, what is that dude from the Rascals? The Little Rascals? Oh my God, you gave me an alfalfa.
That's what you get.
Hair gel, please. The hell was I talking about? All right. Anyway, I'm telling you, demotion is in the cards. Demotion. So in any event, there are those two universes, right? And in those universes, one is just not reality. It's not going to be a reality. And the other one is basically showing that the race is close and maybe Trump's got a 1-point lead in Wisconsin. Harris has a 2-point lead in Michigan. And we're not, as usual, conveying what that actually means to people. And that means the race is close. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They can't tell you at this point with any degree of certainty who is and who is not going to win. Now, I maintain my own opinion and they can have their own opinion, but when you're popping out polls with 1 to 2 point leads, the fact of the matter is the race is within the sampling era and they don't know. And here's a great example of someone who's not in that, like, let's call it the planet Earth crew. Back on planet Earth, Kamala Harris is not going to win Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania by 6 points. She is doing worse with not just white, but working class voters than either Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton did. You understand what that means? Those, as I have repeated over and over again, are the demographic groups that have given pollsters a problem. There is zero evidence that the polls will understate Kamala Harris's support because there is no difficulty in reaching and representing the core Democratic groups that give Harris her support levels in surveys. The problems have always come from certain demographics and certain regions in the country. And if you didn't have an example to help you understand that, you got one now. I'm going to read you my thread. And then I'm going to show you his response to the thread because he was forced to respond. Here is the state of the race, really. There are some really bad pollsters with, and I put this in quotes, repeat offender histories, distorting the data and electoral picture. The fact the same pollster is showing a tied race nationally and a Dem advantage in Pennsylvania really tells the tale. And that is the New York Times, which, by the way, it's kind of weird. Anytime Trump has a lead in the head-to-head, they report the full ballot. Anytime Trump is down in the head-to-head, they report the head-to-head. This is some shit that's going on that just basically Goebbels stuff. In case you don't know, Trump is actually ahead of Harris in the head-to-head. It's tied in the New York Times poll when it's the full ballot. And this is, I decided to put this into a thread because I had leveled a series of like criticisms in a bunch of different tweets. And then I saw others like Patrick Ruffini jumping on the bandwagon and not jumping on the band. He understands. He agrees. So I grabbed the post via Patrick Ruffini, who's as Republican establishment of a pollster as you can get, to further illustrate my point. What he's saying here is correct, and these results sound very noisy alarms. The problems are with key demographic groups, and they impact certain states more than others, i.e. the Rust Belt. And what he wrote is, if polls are suddenly showing Dems doing surprisingly well in the Rust Belt, that should raise antennae that the same 2016, 2020 polling issues are back. The truth is, did they ever leave? I know, and because people always say, well, Rich, what about 2022? The polls were forecasting a red wave, and that didn't happen. That is a midterm cycle. And it was unique in that it is one where the status quo of polling was upset. The realignment that is occurring in this country, before it, that midterm polling advantage benefited Republicans. Now it doesn't. Those high turnout, high propensity voters for midterms are Democratic constituencies. It is the complete opposite of what you may have grown up with and what you remember and all of the conventional wisdom that you have heard for years in the pre-Trump era and even half of the Trump era. 2018, the same thing happened. In each state, hundreds of thousands of working class people were missing from the electorate. So that's why 18 did not correctly foreshadow 2020, and neither will, 22 foreshadow 24. Midterms are not predictive of presidential cycles. And in 22, the one miss that we had, really, I only had one miss in 22, and it was my first actual miss. It was a classic example of believing self-reported likelihood to vote in midterm cycles. And because of that realignment, we simply modeled the electorate in Pennsylvania incorrectly. It's not that our vote preference was wrong. That was all right. It's who turned up to vote. Had Oz had a presidential turnout level, he would have eked out a win. But because he could not gin up that advantage and that turnout with Trump voters, he lost. Hold on. Here we go. All right. So that's what happened. All right. So basically, Pollsters struggled to deal with that as that realignment occurred. But that didn't mean the problems were gone. Because Nate Cohn did an okay job, it wasn't a great job, it was an okay job in 22, does not mean he's going to do well in 20. I remind you that he claimed to have been the most accurate pollster in the 2018 midterm cycle, and he ended up being horrendous in 2020. He was among the worst pollsters of 2020. And here is a great example of what should be raising all of these flags to everybody. If it's very simple, you have to understand that national polling is easier. It's easier. He's got the race tied nationally. He's even got Trump up 1 point in the head-to-head. There is no universe where that national environment is occurring, and Trump is going to lose Pennsylvania. That's not going to happen. The most likely scenario, let me just point this out. The New York Times poll is a great example. They have had issues with overstating Democratic support in national polling, but not as pronounced as in the Midwest and other states such as Florida. Meanwhile, the same pollster is showing a significant underperformance by Harris in New York. Native pollsters are echoing that in California as well. Today, folks, the College of William and Mary, or the College of Mary Washington, whatever it may be, published a poll showing a dead even race in Virginia. And I was skeptical, but Governor Glenn Youngkin has been running around telling everybody that Virginia is in fact in play. Just so you guys understand what's going on really behind the scenes. You know how skeptical I am with the state of Virginia. But he legit is telling everybody that the Washington Post poll is bull and that Trump can win Virginia. I kid you not. And he's not doing it for his state government. Incorrect. Virginia is an off-cycle election. He's not doing it for Hung Cow, who, by the way, is getting clobbered in that poll. Trump is outperforming him by like 8 or 9 points. Again, same story, different state. But either way, how Trump is outperforming in New York, how he's outperforming in California, how he's outperforming in Virginia does not account for the disparity in the national vote and the results we're seeing in the Rust Belt and the Midwest. It's too big. The demographic groups that they and other pollsters have understated would account for that disparity. The short version is this: national polling is easier. They're wrong in the Rust Belt and are almost certainly understating Trump's current support. Again, listen, what's more likely? The New York Times is going to be right and have this crazy dynamic where the national popular vote is close, but Kamala Harris wins Pennsylvania by 5 points? Or the New York Times, who has a very long history of doing this, understating working class support, understating their turnout, understating Trump's support even among suburban women, even among educated whites. They were wrong about seniors, educated whites, suburban women. They've been wrong about it forever in the entire Trump era. So which is more likely? They tried to poll a state they're not good at polling, and they hit a response bias and didn't know what to do with it, or they have some novel electoral situation that's going to play out and they've hit on it. Give me a break. They're wrong. They're wrong in Pennsylvania. They hit a response bias as usual, and they don't know what to do, or they don't care. That's another sad potential explanation. They don't care. Listen to his thread that he was forced to write because, of course, he says it's in his replies. What a joke. And by the way, I just gave you a small little thread, as those of you who follow me on Twitter or X know. I was just hammering it all day because it's glaring you. It's so glaring. It's staring you right in the face. It is possible. It is possible that these guys think they're smarter than they are, and that the hubris of these guys is just unbelievable. It knows no bounds. Trust me. I can tell you, I could recall the Florida discussion with this guy like it was yesterday. I could recall the conversation we had about suburban women in 2020 like it was yesterday. And I was oversampling suburban women and showing him. Actually, I was oversampling the suburbs, but suburban women at that point were like 58% of the survey or something. So he was like, oh, yeah, look at that gender bias. He totally missed the entire point. Bro, you're going to be wrong about even white suburban women. Your polls are going to suck. And he mocked it. I was like, haven't we been here before, Nate? You don't remember this little back and forth we also had during Florida in 2018? I tried showing you that every independent that you interviewed is in a liberal area, and your independents are going to be too skewed to the left. So understand that their hubris really does exceed the new Freedom Tower. Like, it's out into the stratosphere. But if you read this thread, you got to wonder whether or not he knew it, he saw it himself, and just didn't give a shit. Because what repercussions is he going to face if he's wrong? All right. So he says, one question I've seen throughout my replies, as if people would just come up with this out of nowhere. Does a seemingly strong result for Harris in PA signal a 2020 polling error repeat? That's obviously hard to say, but I want to flag one thing that caught my eye. Our polls do not show Harris doing well with the white working class. No shit, Sherlock. And Rui Teixeira from the Liberal Patriot, I don't know. He cites the New York Times poll all the time. And what he's basically trying to say, for those of you who read the Liberal Patriot, and you should, even if you're right wing, you should absolutely read Rui almost on a consistent basis as he publishes to it. He's a smart guy. He's not always right about his forecasts, but his observations are actually well worth listening to. And it is absolutely worth your time to read it. And what he is saying when he cites the New York Times poll is that I don't give a shit what your top line shows. If Harris does this bad, she is going to lose. End of story. And he is 100% correct. In PA, it's Trump 61-34. Nationally, it's Trump 67-30. In each case, that's a greater than 10-point worse than our final pre-election polls 4 years ago. It's also worse than the estimated Biden 20 finish with these groups. So in other words, this is exactly what Rui has been arguing. The polling has always shown, especially Trump, but other Republicans in the recent era, the polling has always understated their support with white voters. The margin with white working class is less understated, in fact, than what they actually get on election day when all is said and done with, for instance, groups like white women in the suburbs. Trump this may shock you to find out. This may shock you to learn. Trump carried white suburban women. You may not, oh my God, what, Rich? What? He did. Yet the New York Times polls in both 16 and 20 showed him getting clobbered with these groups. That did not happen. One of the biggest signal throwing groups in our social bias indicators is, of course, white suburban women. Another one is younger black men. We've been through all this before. Ironically, Hispanics are just like, go F yourself. I'm going to vote for who I want. And they don't really have a huge social bias flag. So if she is doing worse with the white working class voter in Pennsylvania than Biden is, and by the way, that number with Harris nationally is worse than Hillary Clinton. Hillary got less, but she polled better. She polled much better, especially in this poll. Hell, in the Maris poll, she was getting like 42% of the white working class. Go take a look. Go check out some of Quinnipiac's doozies. Hell, Tony Boner said she was getting 30% of Republicans in Florida. Again, there's no evidence to suggest that if there is this disparity between the national and the state polling, with the same pollster, there's no evidence to see, and now it's just bearing out with everyone, but there's no evidence to suggest that somehow what's going on is that the national poll is understating Harris's support. No. The evidence very clearly suggests that they are going to pick it up again, and they are understating Trump's support in the states. Again. Emphasis on again. 22 was a completely different animal, and the vote margins for most pollsters were generally correct. What was wrong was that Republicans cannot get these people out without Trump. It's a midterm. Republicans are now the lower propensity coalition. And that is different from any time in our lives if you are breathing and you are alive right now. If you have blood pumping in your veins, if you have air in your lungs, if your heart is beating, you do not remember a time when this dynamic favored Democrats, of course, because they're the higher propensity party. You don't remember that because it never existed. Democrats always had to rely on lower propensity people, younger voters, non-white voters, less educated voters. It is almost the complete opposite. Difference being the margin with non-white voters for Republicans. But they are the ones now who are relying on lower turnout propensity, lower turnout voters. That is why we are having these errors. And let me tell you, that number, coupled with the Teamsters' ability to reach people that most pollsters would not be able to reach, we have conducted polls for unions before. We have done polling of members of unions. We've been hired to do it. There is a unique ability for them to reach their own members. They want to do that and participate in that survey, in that project. They feel like there's more of a civic duty toward doing that than there is of taking a poll of an election. And these numbers echo that and are, in truth, probably worse because the Teamsters, no doubt, lean to the left of this group overall. This group overall is certainly more Trumpy than even the Teamsters are. Anyway, this doesn't rule out a polling error, whether by chance or bias. Of course it doesn't. He doesn't understand. Do you understand? The fact that he wrote that statement like that tells you he thinks that margin means that, well, that's roughly pretty good for Trump, and that, that would suggest there won't be a polling error. No, that's quite the opposite. He says this doesn't rule out a polling error, whether by chance or bias. No, in fact, it suggests a polling error. This tells you he still doesn't know what he did wrong. He still doesn't get it. And listen to this. The polls entered the field immediately after a debate. That was a choice. Folks, did we enter the field immediately after the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump? No. After Biden had a senile meltdown on the debate stage, did I enter the field immediately after? No. Why? It's not ethical. In my opinion, it is not ethical. Secondly, you're not going to get an accurate result. A classic environment for a response bias. Notably, she leads PA because of gains with college-educated whites who may be most likely to react to news. Maybe. I'm going to go ahead and just go out on a limb and say he's full of shit and he knows that's the case. I'm going to go out on a limb and say if he doesn't know that entering the field after an event like that, immediately after an event, without waiting responsibly for the data distortion to calm down, and he sees that movement with college educated whites, if he doesn't realize that she didn't gain shit, that is simply that he is talking to different college educated whites after the debate, and she may have gained, but she didn't gain that much. It doesn't account for that kind of gain because, of course, public opinion does not move like that. If you had a panel of the same college-educated whites and you asked them to submit an interview every week on Sunday, every week until the election in the state of Pennsylvania, you would barely see any movement. 2-point adjustments here, 2-point adjustments there. That's it. The change comes from who's actually going to vote, that small amount of people who do change their mind. But they clogged up his sample. Those most willing clogged up his sample. And I guarantee you that if he gave me the data set, I would find it immediately. Immediately. I would do it live, update it, upload it to market site live, and I would see it. It would jump right out it immediately. I would keep going, but the point is, and he says, this also doesn't mean we're not underestimating Trump among white working class voters. Wait. That's not even the totality of the problem, and you jumped over the very important consideration before you even addressed it. You are almost certainly underestimating Trump among educated white voters, period, in the state of Pennsylvania, as you did in 2020. That being said, here is the major problem without getting into it, because, well, Rich, isn't it possible she wins white educated voters by a margin greater, which can overcome, how Trump is doing better with the working class? Again, read Rui's own article. The main problem with that argument is this: there aren't enough of them. The margin she is winning those voters by would not be enough if there was even a modest understatement of Trump support. There are more non-educated voters in that state and in that region. It's a 60-40 split in the electorate. Roughly. It could even be worse. It'd be 65-35. And how much of that college-educated sample is postgraduate versus 4-year degree? We don't know. We don't know. It's not broken down. That's why we do that. Because the margin is significantly different. And if you lump them together, like they appeared to have done all through 2020, oh, but Rich, The sample sizes are low. Increase your sample size then, like we do. Like, I'm tired of these excuses. They may not have an unlimited budget for polling over at the New York Times and other places, but by God, folks, they got a larger budget than we do. What's their excuse? Increase your sample size. If you're not stratifying, well, I don't have enough of a sample size. I can't stratify those quotas. Increase your sample size. Or don't fucking poll, man. Because I'm telling you, if there's another major miss, this industry's done. Done. Morning Consult should probably just close up shop now. I mean, there are some really bad ones out there right now. They're going to kill us. Because I'm seeing a couple of scenarios that are, and none of them are good. The polls miss, Trump wins, it's comfortable. And while, his voters and most Americans, the majority don't really, they're not going to be like fuming over it. After the dust settles, they will start to question it. It'll damage the polling industry beyond repair at that point. I don't know if they understand this or not. They think somehow they did so well in 22 and they've like recouped their image. Your image blows. Your image sucks. A halfway decent performance during one midterm cycle does not fix these issues. And it doesn't fix the problem we have of trust with the public. And then there's the other scenario, which is significantly worse for this industry. There's a big miss. But the election draws on for a day or 2 days, and not even the election draws on. There's a significant miss, but Harris wins, and she wins by the skin of her teeth. Then it's really going to be dark. Because damn near half the country, again, will claim that this propaganda between the glowing coverage and the fake bullshit polls, and they're not fake. I mean, I don't like using the word fake. They're not fake, but they are poor quality. To the extent, like, you have to know that by now. And if you don't admit it, like, look at this thread is an unacceptable thread. Why wasn't any of that published with the poll in the New York Times story? Did you see when we literally wrote in the press release after the debate poll, the first debate poll, that Trump's lead is likely exacerbated while the president clearly has an advantage. The former president clearly has an advantage. His lead is likely exacerbated. Every damn show I went on, I said Biden had a terrible performance, and this is definitely impacting the results. Trump has an edge, but it's not this large. This is a response bias. Then after all of the fawning media coverage, it's important to note that some groups were 70% more likely to want to participate in polls this month than they were last month when they were hiding under a rock because of the debate performance. That's literally in the press release of the poll. You publish a tied result nationally and some ridiculous margin in Pennsylvania, and you don't think your readers deserve it, or the reporters who are going to copy and paste it, so-called reporters from other news outlets who are going to copy and paste and regurgitate it in every damn outlet in America, you don't think that they deserve to have that information before they deliver it to the public? That's that's the definition of misinformation. The definition of it. You misinformed the public. You know there's a problem with your poll. You didn't even release it with a caveat, and you misinformed the well, let me ask these left-wing pollsters and pundits and forecasters a question. I wonder if they've ever considered this scenario. Have you ever considered, and I can't believe they haven't after 2016, have you ever considered that it's not the right who's going to be the side that loses their shit and destabilizes this country because of the things that you do? Have you ever considered it's the left who's going to do it? If you keep putting out this garbage and Donald Trump wins, how do you think your people are going to react? I watched a grown man break down and cry on the tennis court because he believed Nate Cohn's numbers in Florida. He 100% believed that Andrew Gillum was going to win. The New York Times, CNN. I'm talking about a guy who used to teach my kid tennis. Like all the ritzy people in the city of Gainesville use this guy or one of his friends. Crying like a child on the tennis courts because CNN and Andrew Gillum up by 13 and Nate Cohen's high range for him was 8 or 10 points. I dropped my children off the day after the election in 2016 to O2B. For those of you who live in Florida, you know what an O2B is. I went to drop off my daughter to pre-K, and the women were at the counters sobbing like psychopaths in complete and utter disbelief. And by the way, that disbelief, because of all the garbage you told them, that later was redirected into the Russia collusion hoax because they needed something to believe. They needed something to make it all make sense to them. The New York Times can't be feeding bullshit. They couldn't do that. They wouldn't do that to us. We're their loyal readers. We're their loyal constituencies. Have you ever considered, since you're the ones with the maniacs running all over the country trying to kill political leaders, have you ever considered what you're going to do to the left when Donald Trump wins this election? The last time they were overturning cars and burning things all through the streets of Washington, D.C. I watched an overturned car burn. Have you ever stood next to a burning car? You know how hot it is before the tires explode? Unbelievable somebody didn't get badly hurt. We have a lot of unstable people in this country. 1, 2 points, even 3 under some, I guess, could be defendable. But these races will and should be within the margin because those races will be that close. If you got anything more than a Trump or Harris +2 in the state of Pennsylvania, you're wrong. That's how close this race is right now. 50-50 national race. I don't think in all of my years of polling, I have ever got a 50-50 race in the presidential election. I don't think so. Hold on. Serious. I don't think so. I'm going to go to my archives right now. I want to know. I'm not saying it will end that way, but I'm saying that's where we are now. And in truth, given the eras and the history, if this thing breaks one way at the end, it's like, I would say 70+% likely that it's going to break for Trump. But he still is not going to win Pennsylvania by 5 points. He's not. Could he win it by 2 or 3 points? Sure. Could she? Sure. But not really because of how bad she's doing with the working class. You cannot Obama beat Romney by 4 points in the state of Pennsylvania, and Obama was still pretty damn popular with the white working class. But Rich, the white educated voter, didn't like Obama, right? But they were 30% of the electorate, so who gives a, you know? It's simple math. Now, at most, educated voters in Pennsylvania will be like 60%. That's it. I mean, excuse me. Oh my God. 40%. It's the reverse. Michigan, they'll be 35. Georgia, roughly the same. I told you when they pulled this switcheroo that despite what the polls were going to show, because I knew it was coming, Robert and I, we talked about this. We told you guys this on What Are the Odds? Because of what fuels polling errors in modern politics, you should absolutely expect this, and that in truth, this could be an even bigger miss than either 16 or 20. That's just the math. And I told you Kamala Harris is going to perform worse than Joe Biden in the Rust Belt with working class voters. Scranton Joe versus the Canadian Indian woman who was representing the state of California as a U.S. Senator. Oh, did I mention? Sorry, the Hindu Canadian Indian woman who was a U.S. Senator from California versus Scranton Joe, who has represented a southern state for 4 decades. Hello? You needed 2 months of polling to iron out the statistical noise in order to realize what was going to happen here? I told you, who was going to do better? Scranton Joe in Northampton and Pike and Monroe and Lackawanna and Luzerne and Erie. Who was going to do better? Scranton Joe or the Hindu Indian Canadian woman who was a U.S. Senator from California? What about Macomb County? Who is going to do better as a Democratic nominee in Macomb County? Scranton Joe or the Canadian Hindu Indian woman who was a U.S. Senator from the liberal state of California? This was the most predictable polling miss in the world if this happens. All of the groups who think they know what the right answer is that they have to tell pollsters and are just like the most susceptible to social desirability bias, pack that sample he's talking about. Packed it like a blunt, man, and rolled it up. So predictable. We can do this exercise again. Who's going to do better in Polk, in Rusk, in Sauk County, Wisconsin? Scranton Joe or the Canadian Hindu Indian woman turned U.S. Senator from the liberal state of California? If I need to further explain myself, no, it's not because they're racist or bigoted or misogynist. It's because she doesn't share their values. It's because she's too damn liberal. It's because majorities in every battleground state say that she's too liberal. By the way, you might have noticed in that Teamsters poll that Joe Biden was beating Donald Trump among the very same people who chose Trump over Harris by a near 60-30 margin. Same people. Biden was also leading in 2020 among the Teamsters polling. If you didn't see that coming and you call yourself a pundit or a pollster, you need a new profession. You're not good at this, and you're adding to the confusion that is inevitably going to lead to some kind of political upheaval in this country. If you didn't watch What Are the Odds, or you might have missed what Robert said about George Gallup's vision for this industry and why I mean, he actually like explained, because Robert and I have had many, many, many conversations about this, and he like eloquently articulated how important this is and how consequential expectations can be. All right, what time is it? 12:53. You know what? Let's just take a little break. I don't know if Laura's over there grabbing the questions, so I'll start with the starred ones. When we come back, we'll just kind of shoot the shit. Again, someone's going to be wrong. You have Emerson basically having Trump up or down in some states, Harris up or down in some states, but the electoral picture is a Trump win. It is. You have the Fox News poll showing in the battleground states that is forecasting an Electoral College Trump win, which is weird that their power rankings do not. Your own poll, dumbasses, is showing that Donald Trump's going to carry basically everything in the Midwest, maybe not Michigan, but he's going to carry Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, Ohio, Iowa. The Sun Belt, doesn't look good for her outside of Nevada. However, I'm telling you, one day we're going to see Nevada vote to the right of Arizona. I think actually we could see Nevada voting Republican and Arizona voting Democrat at some point. Really believe that. You have this electoral picture being painted. You have people messing up in like the New York Times pollster. And then you just have the bullshitters and just unbelievers, like whatever you want to call it. Like people who are putting out just completely unbelievable nonsense, like the Morning Consult and Quinnipiac. The Quinnipiac poll in Pennsylvania was so easy to spot what they did wrong. I'll actually, while we do this like little 30-second break, I'll let you throw some stuff out there. Tell me when you look at those crosstabs where the response bias is. All right, well, play a little game. All right. You'd have to go and get the link. Of course, you have to be online. If you're not online, you can't do it. But if you are, and you can go to Quinnipiac, go to Real Clear Politics, go to Quinnipiac, go check out the link, look at the crosstabs, and when we come back, you tell me where the response bias is. Right. I mean, look, we're going to get to something. There's some really good super chats and local things. We're going to get to them because, right, folks, New York is the mid-Atlantic. There are parts of New York that are Yankeedom, all right? And this is why you need to join the book club, because you understand the lingua that I'm talking about. The vernacular, the vocabulary, like you'll get what I'm saying. There are parts that are Yankeedom, and there are still parts, of course, that are not, right? In Pennsylvania, same thing, and it is part of the Mid-Atlantic. However, because there is a Rust Belt flavor to Pennsylvania, we think of it more as the Midwest, but it's not. It is still the Mid-Atlantic. So there are parts of New York that are forecasting some of the Yankee areas of Pennsylvania, and there is simply no way that Trump will do that well with them and then crush her the way he's crushing her with working class. You can't hold Erie County with that margin. Joe Biden did not hold the Erie County because there are enough white educated voters in Erie County, and he won them by a big enough margin. Joe Biden did better with the working class than Hillary Clinton did. But Rich, the Suffolk poll, but you out there, the Suffolk poll sucks. The Suffolk poll had Hillary Clinton winning by 6 points in the state of Pennsylvania. She lost. They had Joe Biden winning by 9 points in the state of Pennsylvania. He did win. However, it was less than 2 points. Less than 2. And it was because of the working class vote. Joe Biden did better with them. Now, yes, there's, of course, the educated vote component to that. But honestly, if Trump won by those margins with the working class, it wouldn't have mattered. He would have won. He would have carried Northampton and Erie, and his margins in some of the peripheral areas of the Northeast would have been slightly greater. He would have been at around 42% in Allegheny instead of 39. That would have been a wrap. All right, we'll be back in 90 seconds. I don't know. Maybe we'll be back a little bit longer. I don't know. We'll see. I hate sitting. I get a drink of water. I take a sip of coffee. I take a vape, and I'm done. Like, what else needs to be done? But we'll be back. All right, we're back. Inside the numbers, the People's Pundit. It's Friday night. You ever see that? It's Friday night. That guy. Was that American Idol? No, it was Britain's Got Talent, maybe? I don't know. It's Friday night. You ever see it? Oh my God. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to see it. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. Of course, share. The link to the public polling project is below. I would very, very, very much like to pull the Rust Belt very soon. And by Rust Belt poll, at this point, we mean Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. That is what we mean. We will pull them all at the same time. We will be using a qualifier in the voting screen. They will be separated out during the project, and they will be processed basically separately, but like at the same time. And we'll probably drip one a day. Excuse me. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I don't know. Oh my goodness gracious. I don't know what in the Sam hell is going on with the numbers on the website, but as you can see, the bar is there. When the bar gets there, we'll poll. All right. There is still the national poll up there as well. All right. So I think we absolutely positively, without a doubt, need to get into the Rust Belt. All right. So call your friends, share. All right. You see that comedian? What's her name? Esty, whatever. You see her, Kamala Harris's world tour? Because I just want to kind of have a little bit of fun today. You know? I mean, I'm telling you that that's where things are right now. By the way, Remington Research was a +4. It is now a Harris +2. That is a Trump win. Okay? I hate to say it. It's a thankless sport. It is a thankless sport, David. Absolutely. I'm telling you, watch. The tiny crystal balls will attack their own people at Mary Washington University. By I mean their own people, I mean academia, because they came out with this poll. Good for you that you stuck to your guns and you put the results out, and it was what it was. And just so people know who I'm talking about Qantas. They were among the first to poll. Roanoke had come out with 2 polls that showed that it was a close race. Biden, of course, won the state of Virginia by 10 points. Mary Washington is showing a 2-point race. Roanoke, which nailed for some reason over Larry with his tiny crystal balls over at the University of Virginia, seemed to think that only the ABC Washington Post poll is a valid poll to count. Okay. Let's take a trip down memory lane. The ABC Washington Post poll, I don't give a damn if Washington Post is a native. I don't care, which they're not really, but I don't care. They absolutely understated Ed Gillespie, who almost won that race for Senate. Fast forward, they overstated Hillary Clinton's support in 2016. Fast forward, they overstated McAuliffe's support for the governor's race. He lost. That is, of course, the same pollster that gave us the Biden +17 in Wisconsin. Come on, give me a break. Roanoke College nailed it. Um, we will see what happens with. I saw that. Yeah, there will be some battleground polling by Atlas as well. Um, that is, what we're seeing there. We're also starting to get some absentee ballot um numbers here, which is pretty incredible. I don't look. Republicans are slightly better in Pennsylvania, and Democrats are like on par. I don't really see that much of a difference. But then again, that's today's numbers. If you're counting like the final percentage for each, Republicans certainly had big registration gains in 20 from 2020 to 2024. So Democrats are actually falling as time goes on. The trend doesn't look good. So, for instance, on 9/11, they started at about 64% of the absentee ballot requests. All right, that is a little over a point more than their final, what they were, which was almost 63% of the requests on the dot in 2020. They started at 64. They're now down to 63.4, and it's been very consistently trending down. It pops back up here and there, but the trend has been down. This is the problem for Democrats in Pennsylvania as long as Republicans keep voting. And by the way, Republicans started at only 25%. That's a point below. Oh, no, that's on par with their final for 2020, right? But now they're increased to 26, a little over 26%. Um, if this keeps up, we may see a considerable tightening of requests compared to 2020 because Democrats no longer have the voter pool that they used to have. They ran into this problem in Florida as well. They're going to run into it in North Carolina. I would say North Carolina is actually somewhere in between. All right, because there's bigger disparity in North Carolina. Democrats are underperforming compared. People just look at the overall number and they're like, oh my God, this is so good for Democrats. No, it's not. It's down from 2020, and Republicans are up from 2020. And of course, there's the Mark Robinson story. I don't know how much we can get to. If it's in questions, I'll address it. But the problem Democrats are going to run into is that they don't have the 6-point registration edge that they had in 2020. In 2020, they didn't have the 9-point registration edge that they had in 2016. Now, Republicans in presidential cycles, the last one in particular, outvoted Democrats in Pennsylvania. There was a massive election day turnout. It looks like some of it is starting to get banked. We'll see if that is low propensity, high propensity. We can actually analyze that and figure it out. But for right now, it is what it is. All right. So we'll see. We'll have to watch and we'll see. The early vote grifters like Mr. Boner at Target Fart are going to do what they do. No matter what the data looks like, they're going to tell you it's good for Democrats. Sean Trendy at Real Clear Politics for years has said, be very careful reading the early vote tea leaves. I would echo that warning. You don't know who they're voting for. In North Carolina, we have tried to explain this now back to back. White registered Democrats, especially older ones, are not really done with the transition yet. In Florida, they are, but they're not really done yet. By the way, states like Louisiana, same thing. Ancestral voting history that is solidly Democratic, but they would vote Republican at the national level. They have not finished that transition yet. So you're going to see Democrat ballots all through counties. Like Hyde County is a great example. It's a small county, but it's a great example. There are significantly more registered Democrats than there are registered Democratic votes. Why? Because they're not Democrats anymore. When you poll them, they may say they're Republican. They'll probably call themselves Republican. Many of them will. They'll identify as Republican, but they are not registered as Republicans. And they will vote for Trump and the Republican if there's a Senate race, for instance. Governor's race can be a little bit different, guys. I mean, we'll see. But the truth is, Mark Robinson was down before this. There is no such thing in the academics as reverse coattails. There's a Mark Halpern clip that he put on X last night, basically saying that both sides believe that this could hurt Trump. There is no evidence of what is called reverse coattails, what is referred to as reverse coattails, where the down ballot hurts the top of the ticket. That has never been a thing. And until this now in North Carolina, now, it has been laughed at academia and political consultant circles for years. That concept is not a legitimate concept. It does not happen to presidential candidates. Now, can he hurt state offices? Yeah. And listen, folks, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's fair what happened to Mark Robinson. But there are two things that really need to be addressed. One is grow up. Of course, it's not fair. Let's not forget that there was a Democrat whoring herself on OnlyFans. And not only did she not drop out, they circled the wagons. They said it was empowering and that any attack on her was actually against the law. It was doxing and it was porn revenge or something, whatever the hell that's called. And that, it's hands off. Low blow, baby. Low blow. The girl's taking it on OnlyFans for $1 a month and wants to be in the state legislature. Low blow, dude. Not only all of that, but she almost won that race. She barely lost that race. So yeah, it's a double standard. But I read some of those messages that were not even published. I read some of those messages from that account. And they're not going to let him, they're not going to forgive him for this. He was not upfront. If those messages are him, I don't know if all of them are really him or not, but the Ashley Madison email is his. I can tell you right now, I know. They told me immediately. People in the know told me immediately that email address was his. So don't be pretending to be a righteous man of God if you're nailing your wife's sister. Don't pretend to be a righteous man of God if your email is on Ashley Madison and you're cheating on your wife. If you have an open marriage, go to the microphone. Tell people you have an open marriage. Americans are very forgiving. If you're a nymphomaniac, for those of you who don't know what that is out there, person who's addicted to sex, go to the microphone and tell the American people that you're a nymphomaniac. They'll forgive you. This is the thing about politicians they don't understand. The cover-up or the hypocrisy, because that's the real problem here with this race. The hypocrisy is worse. The cover-up is worse. I don't know what to do. If you're the Republican Party, I don't know what you do here. I will also tell you this, because it has to be said. How much time do I have? I have to take a break here. The fact of the matter is, establishment Republicans murked Mark Robinson. I was told, and I transcribed the entire conversation. I talked to 3 people last night. One of them, a media guy. Another one, a media guy, but a person in the know. Another one who is a pretty high-ranking Republican. And another one who is I think a fair way to put it is, of course he is a donor, but he himself they've been trying to get him to run for office because he did have a government position for a long time in the heart of establishment Republicanism in North Carolina. And they all said the same thing. One of them had actual knowledge of how this went down. This is not a media story. The media did not do their due diligence to get the story. This is opposition research, and the opposition was the Republican establishment, who then gave this story to Josh Stein's campaign, who then gave it to CNN. Why? Because, and this is going to make some of you uncomfortable, I'm just going to tell you because it's absolutely true. Republicans, especially in the South, establishment Republicans pretend and pay lip service to the concept of the Black Republican. And as one person I spoke to it last night referred to it as the political unicorn that is the Black Republican. They say they want it. And if you're like a Tim Scott kind of Republican, that's all right. And they'll use you as like an example of, a strong black man, conservative, strong black conservative. Could be a woman. It doesn't really matter. But leading a state, no dice. Truth be told, the country club sweater vest Republican, especially those who are in the South, are very uncomfortable with the concept of black people being in their party. Especially running their party, actually is a better way to put it. Running the party. Very uncomfortable with it. All right. So I hate to tell you, but that's true. That's true. All right. So with that stated, I think we need to take a break. And we can talk more about it in a little bit. I can give you direct quotes from this conversation. It'll piss you off. It'll make you sick. All right. Everyone and their mother is I get pissed when you text me, David, but that was actually a good text because I'm going to read that article when we come back. I told you it was Freewheeling Friday. We'll have a good 10 minutes to read it, and then we'll do some questions. I just was talking about this. He must be watching, and that's why he sent this. You watching? You can text me. You watching the show right now, brother? You should pop on. You want to come on? You want to join me? Let's see if he's busy. You want to join me, or are you busy? Just kind of shoot the shit for a half hour and answer questions. Oh, I don't know. He may be out. Ah, man. David Giglio will join us later. Or not later, next time. And we're gonna have Mark Mitchell on, by the way. Mark Mitchell and I were talking earlier before the show, and we see. So next time we do this, we should both be on, like comparing our data sets. Like, let's show people our data sets. I love the idea. I absolutely love the idea of having Mark on. We both go into our literally the back end of our we use multiple things, obviously, to collect responses and log responses. We use multiple things, but there's always a central hub. He uses, I believe, the same one as me for everything as well, which you guys know who it is, Alchemer. And, well, I will later upload stuff to Alchemer, so sometimes you can't see it all, but you get the point. And we can go in and show you, and we'll compare it and see what's going on. And we compare different responses for different groups by different modes, because of course they still do incorporate IVR. We do not. We do peer-to-peer texting, phone, text online, and online. And they at Rasmussen largely do IVR. They do some texting components, but largely IVR and the demographic panel from online. So yeah, it would be interesting to do that and then see what's going on. All right, so let me open this up just to get it ready to rock and roll. But this is like always funny what people are saying behind the scenes. But yeah, just to reiterate what I was saying about the North Carolina governor's race, they murked Mark Robinson, the Republican establishment. It came from them, and there's more to come. I can just tell you, he's not. I don't know how he would survive. He's trying to hold on. All right. And I don't think you can under these circumstances. There are apparently financial things they're going to dump. And this is how they do the smear. They drop a whole bunch of like outrageous things at once. Some of it is like sprinkled with bullshit, and it's not true. Some of it is, but people can't discern. And then they pile on. And every 24 hours, 48 hours, you're going to get something else sprinkled with bullshit, but with an element of truth. That's what happened to Roy Moore. Ironically, you may have noticed Eric Erickson had brought up Roy Moore on Twitter about how this is like the same thing. Roy Moore was also thrown under the bus by the establishment. We later found out that that is what the Washington Post did. Took like one halfway credible claim and then piled on with a bunch of bullshit they sprinkled on top. And most of that stuff was not true and or was greatly exaggerated. And it cost Republicans a Senate seat in Alabama, which then in turn cost them greatly until Doug Jones was defeated, and defeated handily, by the Republican challenger, who is now, of course, Tommy Tuberville, who is now in the U.S. Senate. But that did great damage. The truth is, and that's why I put this as the sub-headline of the show, the truth is, and this is actually, well, it's not a direct quote. I can read you the direct quote. But Republicans would rather lose to a white Jew than win with a black Trump Republican. That's the truth. Sorry, but that is the truth. It's more so this time than an element of just your typical like racial component. It's more than that. It's that, because it's not really just about racism. It's not. It's that he's he's not like them. It's not inherently like, the problem isn't that he's just a black guy. The problem is that he doesn't look like them. He doesn't talk like them. He doesn't come from where they come from. And he's a Trumper. He's uncontrollable. He's Trump-esque. It's too much. They're never going to let him run that state. They were never going to let him. There are Republicans in the government, the state government, different levels, various levels. The elected officials and the bureaucrats are not like the activists and the leaders that are in the NC GOP. Of course, they have a working relationship, but they're not exactly the same. All right, which is why you had Michael Watley like still supporting Mark Robinson's like holy. Now he's thrown him under the bus, but they're not like that. These people are government. They're all right if it's a Republican government, and they've actually done a great job making the governor's office basically irrelevant. They have their super majorities, which they're terrified are going to be destroyed by this Robinson story, these stories. But this is a demon of their design. Do you have any idea how many political figures are on porn sites? Talking it up on OnlyFans, talking it up. So yeah, I get what you're saying. It's not fair. It's a double standard. That is the world we live in. And as Republicans, you should have operated understanding that double standard exists, and you have to either confront it, get in front of these things, or don't run. Don't run. If you're worried about what it's going to do to your family, don't run. When I was considering running, I mean, most of my stuff we've talked about ad nauseum. Like, I wasn't going to leave any skeleton. You cannot leave any skeletons in your closet. Just be honest with the American public up front, and they will forgive you for a lot. Trump was hilarious. Listen, I never lied to you. Guess what? I love sex, and I love pretty women. Whoops. Never lied to you about it, did I? Listen to what they got him say. Does some of the stuff Mark Robinson, if it's him, said on that channel board, is it worse than grab him by the... I mean, it's in the same flavor, for sure. Especially the stuff about his sister-in-law. If you haven't read it, don't. Spare yourself. But Trump was just like, look, man. Like, if it was Trump, he'd be like, I nailed my wife's sister. She's hot. Sue me. Right? Like, he would handle it totally different. Right? Right? Like, yeah, it's wrong. But guess what? You're not voting for me because of that. You're voting for me for policy. And of course, Democrats, they get to fly to islands with underage girls who are basically, not basically, are being trafficked in the sex trade. And Bill Clinton can sit there and nail as many as he wants. The Prince of England. Of course, he did pay a price. Did he, though, really? One person I spoke to, too, before I take this break, this is an important thing to note, and I don't want to forget. Come back from the break and forget. If you Republicans out there didn't realize what war you're in, like you are in a war. They're trying to kill your political leaders. They'll start trying to kill you soon. They're trying to imprison your political leaders. They're already imprisoning you all, supporters. If you didn't realize it, let me add one more thing to the top of that pile. Everyone in North Carolina believed Mark Robinson was down. He was going to lose. Everyone believed it. Yet they did this anyway just to, and this is a good point. One of the people I spoke with last night made. They did this anyway just to step on his neck. That's how vicious and disgusting they can be. Why? I'm going to tell you why. Because Kamala Harris is down in Pennsylvania. And Wisconsin and Michigan are just up for grabs. Nobody really knows for sure. They think she's got a lead in Michigan, but they're not sure. It's too close. Wisconsin, they don't believe the polling in. They don't. They know. Behind the scenes, they know what I tell you every day is true, which is that Wisconsin can pull to the left of Michigan and Pennsylvania, and it's probably going to vote to the right. Or at least there's a 50-50 chance it's going to vote to the right of Pennsylvania. They know that's true. Nevada's not going the way they thought it was going to go, and the registered voter trends are going against them despite their little Swiftie push. Arizona's just not reliable. And Georgia, they thought they were doing better in, but Trump is stubbornly holding significant support among younger black men, particularly under the age of 45. She needs to push him down to about 7% of the black vote in that state. It's not happening. And she doesn't want to rely on white people. So she needs another state. If she's down in Pennsylvania and all of that is going on, she needs to upset the map and take a Republican state or Republican-leaning state from Donald Trump. So now they're going to come up with this reverse coattail thing that was never a thing, was a laughingstock in this industry forever, a joke of a thesis. It's not even a thesis. There's no evidence to try to argue in a thesis that it's real. But they're going to do it. They're going to try to manifest it because she's down in Pennsylvania. Sorry, Nate Cohn, you're wrong. And you're going to be wrong. She's down in Pennsylvania and both campaigns know it. Her campaign knows it too. They can prove me wrong and release their internal polling right now. But they won't because she's down in Pennsylvania. I'm going to say this again. She's down in Pennsylvania. And if she loses Pennsylvania and the map stays the same, Donald Trump will be the 47th president and she will lose. So they took the extraordinary step to destroy this man, tried to destroy his family, the rest of his professional life, because they need another state. Had they not shafted Josh Shapiro because there's too many Jew haters in their party, they wouldn't be in this position. Did you see the New York Times poll, the Siena poll, in New York? Did you see the Jewish vote? No bueno. There's also a pretty, relatively speaking, a fairly significant population of Jewish voters in the state of Pennsylvania as well, consequently. All right, me and my alfalfa Laura head will be back. We got to take a real quick break and pay the bills here, folks. Let me do another 30-second countdown so I can go run and grab a water she never brought me, and we'll be right back and I'll do my read. And then we'll hit your questions after I read you a really quick article you're going to find interesting. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. The link to the public polling project is in the description below. Let's get in the Rust Belt, folks. Let's do this. dun, dun. Yeah, I'm like fighting with this box of Essentia. Like, give me the damn bottle. I'm at war with this thing. I got it. Victorious. Can't wait to see your questions today. Should be a good one. All right, let's pay the bill, shall we? Next week, by the way, we're gonna have our boys on from Freedom Gold, and they're gonna tell us all about the Fed rate cut along with the new CPI. We're going to have a talk about that and how, of course, will impact our already volatile markets. Because the truth is, folks, markets are unpredictable. The stock market is unpredictable, right? And that's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. So people are looking for a place for protection, right? And that is, of course, why I want to talk to you about our folks at Freedom Gold USA. Look, I'm going to cut it to the short here. When he comes on, he's going to announce a winner as we get every month. Somebody's getting free silver, baby, because that's the deal over here at People's Pundit. All right. Not only have they lowered the minimum requirement, because most of these houses, let's face it, 50 grand, 20 grand, 10 grand, even Freedom Gold is 5 grand. They lowered the minimum requirement for you guys to just $500 to get started. You could get a credit for a new gold or silver IRA. You can get a $500 credit. All of these deals, all of them, all right, are still going to be with free shipping and insurance, which is like damn near unheard of in this industry. Okay. Look, bottom line, you'll be thrown into a prize pool. It's dope. And someone's going to win some free silver, free gold and silver. They have some of the best deals on some of the highest quality gold and silver you will find on the market. They also, as you probably many of you have figured out, also deal with other things as well. So you should definitely go over to freedomgoldusa.com/rich. That's freedomgoldusa.com/rich and check out whatever their deals you may qualify for, right? Whether you want, don't forget, it's easy when you're on the website because that's, of course, for us. But you can also use their number. Don't forget to tell them the People's Pundit sent you, which is 888-279-3592. 888-279-3592. What's awesome about Freedom Gold, folks, is that the guys over there are really just about giving you as much information as you can. They really want you to be confident when you make a decision. Of course, they want you to come on board, but they want to make sure that you're confident enough. You're not going to get the pushy sales tactics, the boiler room hard sell. You're not going to get that over there. All right. So, if you have questions, you want to ask them, just give them a call. They'll answer them. As many of you have already figured out, I've gotten a lot of great feedback from you guys. I knew they will treat you well, and I knew they would. Like, I remember myself being in the financial industry, and there's a right and a wrong way to deal with people in this industry. And Freedom Gold is definitely one of the good guys. All right. And one of the good guys who do it the right way. Again, one more time, the number, of course, it's our number for them, but it doesn't hurt to say, hey, People's Pundit sent me. 888-279-3592. And you can also check out their website at freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Also, while we're here, don't forget about the new wellness company, Contagion Emergency Kit. If you go to twc.health/TPP, that's twc.health/TPP. You can get $30, save yourself $30 at checkout. This thing is lower than the cost of a single visit to the hospital. All right. And it's peace of mind. It's a no-brainer. Every American household should, because it is only available in the US, every American household should have a kit at least. And Laura and I are thinking at least 2 kits. We have 2. All right. So it's just peace of mind, especially if you have kids. It contains life-saving drugs like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, a Z-Pack, even Bedenoside, a nebulizer the new one has, and it comes in a very cool new black case. You can choose different colors. There are different colors. The original ones, remember, was sky blue. Our first one is still sky blue. All right. And they listened, they heard feedback, and they made the case more bug out ready, conducive, whatever you want to call it. twc.health/TPP. And again, like I said, hopefully we'll have Dr. Drew on here real soon. We've been trying to make that work, and it's just been a scheduling conflict because there's this new conference coming up that's eerily reminiscent of what they did during COVID. Right? But they're just they're pushing this bird flu. It's money. It's money, baby. It's money. Big, big money. It's the bottom line. And by the way, thank you to Michael Pruser for putting together that early vote graphic in Pennsylvania. I forgot to say that. All right. I want to read this, and then we're going to hit up your questions, okay? This is interesting. Democrats privately worry the Teamsters non-endorsement is a warning sign. It's not also the endorsement, it's the numbers. Because we just went over that thread by Nate Cohn, him trying to explain why he's trying to be pro-Harris, even though he knows his poll is going to be wrong. I mean, what the fuck is this? What is this? A pollster thinks they have bad data, they spike it. You explain it to people. It's the only legitimate reason to spike a poll. I collected bad data. I went into the field when I should not have went into the field. This is textbook response bias. Here's the result. Take it for what or at least, the truth. There's a few things, we've gone over this before. There are a few things that pollsters can do when they know that they've had distorted data, which is what the New York Times got. The right decision, in my mind, has always been you suck it up, you pay the money, and you stay in the field to do it right. If you don't have it, then you need to eat the loss. You don't put out garbage. You do not put out garbage. And then some apologist thread when you take the heat from people who are better than you at your job. All right, let's throw it up. Look, that's actually an ad that worked. Oh, I was just on Shriners. We try to give as much as we can to Shriners and St. Jude's, frankly. Some of those stories are just unbelievable. And they're wonderful. I don't know if they do this for everybody, but you want to take a tour, they'll arrange it. Give long enough, you'll have a family reach out to you and thank you. Anyway, let's get back to it. Harris still has work to do to win over older, white, working-class voters who make up a large portion of the electorate in the Rust Belt. Still has work to do? I mean, they spin this shit. You really got to give it to them. They can spin some shit. She's doing worse than Hillary Clinton. What are you talking about? Joe Biden won because of his strength with the white working class. Not as strong as Obama, but just strong enough. Hillary Clinton lost because of her weakness with the working class and because the polls understated Trump's support among educated voters, as they did again in 2020. Educated voters, suburban women. Would you be shocked to learn that Trump carried the suburbs in Pennsylvania in 2020? Would that surprise you to hear? Would it surprise you to hear that he beat her with educated white women? Did the polls show that? Nope. No, sir. All right. 8 years after Donald Trump shattered the blue wall, some Democrats worry he could do it again. Most polls show Kamala Harris tied or leading Trump in the critical battleground states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin after a commanding performance at the debate. Party leaders are projecting confidence publicly, but on the ground, jittery electoral officials, strategists, and allies are quietly pointing to warning signs for the vice president. The Teamsters withholding an endorsement from Harris this week after internal polling showed most respondents backing Trump. No, it showed Harris getting her ass kicked among Teamsters, something no Democrat has done since 1984. Congratulations, Kamala Harris. Everybody give Kamala a round of applause. Scranton Joe, or the Canadian, Indian, Hindu, female U.S. Senator from liberal California? Who's going to do better with the working class? Come on, man. And it's sparking fresh concerns that the GOP nominee could have a higher than expected support among union members, especially men. Labor leaders in other sectors attest that, like in 16 and 20, the former president has maintained a grip on key parts of their rank and file, despite his anti-union record. Trump has an anti-union record? Are you effing kidding me? Trump is the most pro-union Republican president, like, ever in the modern era. What are you talking about? I guess it depends what you think. If the incestuous relationship between union leadership and the Democratic Party and government is what is your priority, then I guess maybe Trump, you can argue, is that. If jobs and wages and sector growth is your priority or are your priorities, then Trump has been a more pro-union president than Barack Obama, than Joe Biden. Privately, Democrats say Harris still has work to do to win over older, white, working class voters who make up a large portion of the electorate in the Rust Belt and have been hit by high prices. Quote, candidly, Trump has a solid base of working class people that have bought into his message. It's like none of these people have legitimate grievances. They've all just been duped. And it's so funny that they approach this way, because this is actually not difficult. We hear this a lot in focus groups and even in polls. Hey, you ever poll low information people? You ever poll low information voters to see how many there are? And I just chuckle. You got to keep yourself from like injecting any bias into it. You can't allow yourself to do it. But the truth of the matter is, for countless research projects dealing with belief systems and voir dire and all these other things, scope was not inherently political. It is very obvious that the most low information section of the electorate is Democratic. They believe in the fictions and the hoaxes at much higher rates than Republicans do. It's a fact. Republicans don't believe that Michael Brown had his hands up and said, "Don't shoot." Republicans don't believe that George Zimmerman just executed Trayvon Martin on the way to the damn store. Most Republicans don't believe that Donald Trump colluded with Russia and Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 election. Most Republicans don't believe that Donald Trump called all Mexicans rapists and murderers. Most Republicans don't believe that Donald Trump called neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. I could keep going on. Should I go on? Do you need me to go on? Most Americans don't believe that Donald Trump told people to inject bleach to fight COVID. Most Americans don't believe that Donald Trump called for using horse medicine to combat COVID-19. These are lies, hoaxes, scams, grifts that are pushed by left-wing media that still hold credibility with their voters, so they believe it. Do Republicans believe in hoaxes and scams? Absolutely. QAnon being among the worst. That was never real. That was absolutely fake. Michael Flynn was never some player in this like grand 4D chess thing. Trust the plan, trust the plan. That's one of the major examples of the right being duped and believing in hoaxes and having a low information, spectrum when it came to that particular issue anyway. And yet they always, their strategists don't know that or understand that. So every time there are voters who have legitimate grievances that make them pick Donald Trump, they do that. Bought into his message. Like, you have hurt these people. Don't you understand? Your vision for the country hurt these people. Because it doesn't impact you does not mean it's not real, and their grievance is not valid, credible. They would do a lot better to understand that. Quote, it's movable, and it's been moving, but it's not like some tide that's turned. Some Teesners, in other words, they're saying they think they're doing better with unions this year than like Hillary Clinton did, but it's not as good as where they were with Joe Biden. That's what they're saying. Some Teamster leaders have questioned the methodology of the polling showing Trump winning majority support among the union members. Oh, give me a break. Everybody knows how it was done. But one pro-Harris union, by the way, the very same voters chose Biden. It's her. Don't give me this, it's not me, it's you shit. It's her. But one pro-Harris union official who was granted anonymity to speak freely spoke in dire terms about it. The person said it is a, quote, red flag, unquote, that is reminiscent of the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton underperformed among union households despite winning the majority of top labor endorsements. Quote, hard not to have HRC flashbacks right now, to be honest. That stuff might be wrong beneath the surface, the official said. I hope it's not. Democratic strategists said Harris's performance in November could come down to the historic gender gap, especially among blue-collar voters that have so far defined this election. Pete Giangreco, longtime Democratic consultant who worked on several presidential campaigns, said he's optimistic. Of course, here's the good guy, here's like good cop, bad cop. The good news is that she's doing better than most Democrats ever have with white, non-college women. But the bad news is that the white, non-college men were seeing a step back. That's not actually true. It depends whether or not. Well, I'm going to shut up. The gender gap is growing wider because these groups are headed into different directions. I'm worried about her with seniors, most of all. I just think they don't know her, said a Pennsylvania Democratic elected official. She should be coming in on Medicare and Social Security, not like non-fucking stop. Pardon my French. That's her quote. How much time do you hear at the top of the ticket talking about that issue? Almost nothing. They just have to talk about it more. Folks, it's a little late. It's a little late. The electorate in Pennsylvania is very senior. Most people don't realize. They think senior electorates and they think Florida. And that is true. But the fact of the matter is, Pennsylvania is a very senior heavy vote. The white senior vote in a state like Michigan is also absolutely enormous. All right. So this is a, very, very, very difficult thing for Democratic voters to hear right now. But the fact of the matter is, the evidence would suggest that it is most likely that they are going to do this again, folks. That they're going to have this up again. And even compare, just use your brains for a second and think about her versus Hillary Clinton. Would you think someone like a Kamala Harris would do better than Hillary Clinton with white working class voters? Come on. Be honest with yourselves. Be honest with yourselves. Of course not. Yeah, a lot of anger. Oh, we got a Teamsters in the chat. We got Teamsters in the chat. And let me ask you, Shovelin, you for Trump or you for Harris? Curious. We got Teamsters in a few chats here. That's cool. Listen, if you're a Teamster, I'd love to hear from you. Put your thoughts in the chat. I would love to hear from you. Oh my God. All right, let's do this. It's 1:45. Let's start. I have invented my own aggregate. For any poll where the pollster also polled in 2020, deduct the 2020 bias. Then take the median, not the mean, of the polls. Current status, 13 polls since the debate, Trump plus 0.5. That's interesting. I mean, let me tell you too, like that's close to what, you see like the Silver Bulletin do and others do. If you want to go to the hill.com, the hill.decisiondesk.com, I think it is, or the hill.election.com, whatever it may be. The Hill Decision Desk aggregate. They actually have a tool there where you can look at the polling average that they have and then calculate it using either the 2016 or the 2020 polling bias. And by the way, it will show you Trump's ahead, like everywhere, if the 2020 polling bias is in place, in effect, except for Minnesota. He's not ahead of Minnesota. Of all the states that we've really been talking about. That was also true of Virginia, but I think the last 2 polls in Virginia may have put that within the polling error, the aggregate polling error. That's interesting. Just remember though, Steve, not all polls are created equal. And like we all have our own polling biases. I was just talking to this guy, Doug, online, who has a whole data set of polls and their biases. And we're up there. We're among the top pollsters. And we actually get a bonus point in his poll because we have the lowest average error. But that freaking Pennsylvania poll in 22 killed us. Otherwise, we'd be up there with Atlas. We're below Atlas right now because of that. But, not all polls have the same bias. And the good news for us is that we had biases in different directions and not in one direction. So we may have overstated Biden in one state, understated him in the other, blah, blah, blah. And that helped us with that's why we have the lowest average error, by the way, because we're one of the few polls out there that you will see understate Democratic support, overstate Democratic support, understate Republican support, overstate Republican support. Actually, looking at his spread, I was actually his spreadsheet, the data set, I was actually really surprised how few polls have done that. In truth, most of them are overwhelmingly in one direction. We're like R+2. That's nothing in this day and age. And that's aggregate. And by the way, remember too, that not all polls do national and state, right? So our national poll was like dead on in 2020, dead on. Our House ballot was dead on, but we were R+4, 7 or something in Pennsylvania in the midterm. Meanwhile, in 2016 and 2020, our presidential polling in Pennsylvania was dead on. I mean, you couldn't get any more accurate in 2016. It was absolutely dead on. It was like 0.2 of a percentage point off because we gave both candidate vote share to the decimal. So it wasn't a whole number. So basically, we were trying. That was the first year we ever did that. And then others started to do it too. I think it was just Trafalgar and I for a really long time who would give the at least one decimal percent value. I used to do 2 for a while, but it just confused people, so I stopped doing that. Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, that's funny. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised by a Trump plus 0.5. I wouldn't be surprised by a Harris plus 2. I'm talking about actual election day numbers, or Harris plus 2.2, right? I would be surprised by a Harris plus 4. I don't think that's going to happen. She's down in too many states in the internal polls and in the good polls. And by good, I don't mean high quality, low quality. High transparency, low transparency. I'm talking about who the hell calls elections correctly and who doesn't. By the way, while we're talking about nerds like that, if I ever went bald, I would not wear a comb over. I would just be bald, dude. I'd probably bick my head. Why does he do that? And then that shit is like the wind hits him and that shit is all over the place. You look ridiculous, bro. I'm sorry. I'm going to be off topic. But it's ridiculous. Just pick your head, brother. Never apologize for road breaks. Get them, Laura. Only thing is with that, Peppers, I lose my train of thought. I lose my train of thought when Roro breaks in like that. He's just so damn cute, Yeah. Yeah. By the way, yeah, here's another thing in that survey, which goes with one of the comments from locals about Trump's support Social Security, for Social Security. The public polls, it says right in the Politico article, in fact, that the Democratic strategist behind the scenes will tell you that she can't really do that when it comes. She can't have the usual advantage that Democrats have with Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, because Trump doesn't want to touch these things, and that the private polling, right, including one that was done by a labor group, it's a liberal group. It's called Alliance for Retired Americans. It was done by a liberal pollster. She had a 1 to 2 point advantage on Trump on these issues. That's it. And they described it as concerningly tight, giving the parties historic advantage on these issues. Jason McGrath is like, listen, don't believe the bullshit, the public bullshit. When races are decided by thousands of votes and you see a warning sign like the numbers on Social Security and Medicare, you need to take it seriously. If we win back or persuade seniors, it'll be on those issues. And she's not doing it now, basically. Sean Fan, he's the United Auto Workers president. They did endorse Harris. They're very concerned that their members are not getting on board with them. And he is basically what they're saying here, because ironically, there was a Politico article in 2020 about union support, and the UAW president was in that article as well. Basically, it's a threat. If members do not vote the way they want them to vote, there will be consequences. How do they know? That's what union members need to ask themselves. All right. They rely on social pressure, stigma. All right. Through the grapevine, leadership have rats who rat to them who the Trump supporters are. I kid you not. They will show up at your door, intimidate your wife when you're at work. I mean, I've heard all sorts of horror stories. In 2020, they leaned on these people heavily. All right, so that's the problem. So Teamsters, Democrats care more about state unions now. Bunch of Teamsters in the chats, man, for real. Okay, so you're a Trumper. Well, the one I'm looking at, you're a Trumper. Is there any Harris supporters that are Teamsters in the chats? I mean, statistically speaking, there wouldn't be. Harris already coming down on Morning Consult too, by the way. Harris already coming down in the Scott Rasmussen, not Rasmussen, the Scott Rasmussen. Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Let's not forget that they significantly overstated. Their non-college vote says it all. They only have it 44 Trump, 40 Harris. There you go. They're the only poll, too, that has Harris ahead in the Midwest. Every national poll that has been, not everyone, but most of the national polls have Trump ahead in the Midwest. All right. Rich, do you think the October surprise for Waltz would even change anything? Listen, I honestly don't think so. I really don't think so. I really don't. I think we're in the situation we're in, and we'll see. First of all, if they have an October surprise, they need to release it soon. Ballots are already going out. So, it's where it's at. That was a good question, though. That was from Locals. David from Locals says, Rich, I want to guard against bias. Which election data analysts on the left or left-leaning do you suggest we follow? Read to get a reasonable point of view, even if we disagree with it. I know Rui Teixeira is one. Are there others? Listen, it is fair to say that Sean Trendy is on the left. You could read Sean as well. All right, but Sean would call himself, I think, a traditional Republican, and he is a TDS fanatic. So Sean is on the left, whether he realizes he's on the left or not. It's like if you don't support endless wars, the maiming of innocent women and children overseas in the name of some bullshit excuse for democracy. If you don't support hollowing out our entire communities for some bullshit globalist view, then you're like, listen, to those Republicans out there, I would tell you this, and it's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact. You are, in fact, the anomaly. The Republican Party has always been the America First party. Donald Trump didn't make up America First. Ronald Reagan used it. And guess what? Ronald Reagan got it from what is now referred to as isolationist Republicans. Yeah, they're the isolationist Republicans who don't want to get into the domino theory, which turned out to be a bullshit, bogus theory that got us into wars, cost us, was a myth of empire, drained our treasure, drained our blood, drained our wealth, drained our generational just generations of people. If you're not part of the war generation in their mind of thinking, then you're somehow like in this crazy place. Um, there are some other ones. I used to like David Byler a lot. Stay away from the Greg Sargents of the world. Stay away from the Larry Sabatos of the world. Stay away from, unfortunately, because I used to enjoy them, Kyle Condons of the world. These people have been in the business for too long. All right. You're no longer Ohio Flav, bro. Stay away from the Cook Politico report. Although I do read Amy Walter, she is so biased. It's disgusting to me now. It's just that sometimes I do because she used to be somebody I used to like to read a lot. Unfortunately, she's not readable anymore. I mean, there are a couple good people out there, but yeah. I mean, Cook is awful. Cook is awful. Larry Sabato and Crystal Ball, they're awful. There's no value in reading them anymore. Unfortunately. And you could read Wasserman, since he copies and pastes half the things I say anyway. You could read Dave Wasserman. Why do I think that Minnesota could be the only state that is close but won't flip? That's a good question. Hold on. There are two ways to answer that question. One is the very simple way, and it's less granular. And that has to do with, you remember how I told you about the difference between the working class and non-working class vote in some of these Rust Belt states, especially, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. In Minnesota, let's say she wins white college educated voters by a larger margin than Biden did, but she loses a white working class by a larger margin than Biden did. That could actually, she could still hold on in Minnesota given the percentages of each. That's number one. There are more of those educated voters where they need to be for her to win. All right. Secondly, and the more granular issue is that there are more Scandinavian voters in Minnesota, Scandinavian ethnicity that tend to be not 10, they are more liberal, right? Now, among the Scandinavian vote, you have subgroups of Scandinavians, and there's one that's basically a swing vote or can be a swing vote. They voted for Obama. They did not vote for Romney or McCain, but they voted for Trump in 16. They did vote for him in 20, but not by the same margins. And that is Norwegians. And there's a significant chunk of Norwegians in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in to a lesser degree Michigan, but they're still there nonetheless. In Minnesota, of course, there are Norwegians. However, they share the Scandinavian voting blocks with more liberal Scandinavian groups, or ethnicities, such as the Finnish and Swedes, which are more liberal. All right. In Wisconsin, if you look at the map in Wisconsin, you could look at the Southwest all the way up to the West, just shy of those three northwestern counties, Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, right? And you're going to see large pockets of Norwegian ethnic voters that are, some of them are Catholic, but for the most part anyway, they are going to vote for Trump, and they're going to vote for Trump heavily. But then once you get to those three counties in what we call lumberjack country, Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, there are more Swedes and even small groups of Finns, but significant enough to make a difference. Trump does do better with these groups than Republicans do, with the exception of Ron Johnson. And that's why Trump and Ron Johnson get in the 40s in those counties, while other Republicans get in the 30s, and like Mitt Romney and Brian Hagedorn, they got like in the low 30s. And that's just too much. You cannot lose those counties by that much. 40, 42, I mean, you really want to be at like 44, 45. But if you could pull that and then run up the vote in other areas, you can win Wisconsin. But if you're Brian Hagedorn, if you're what's his name who ran for governor? I forgot already. What's his name? Baldwin. Well, if Hovde doesn't do well enough against Baldwin in those counties, Hovde will lose that seat. So that's really, so key. In Minnesota, however, there are larger shares of those voters. So, and they tend to be, by the way, more educated, but there's a significant share even of the working class. So, like, you're not going to see Trump win the working class vote by that kind of margin in Minnesota to hold. I mean, he could, and that's when he would win the state, but he would also have to couple it with doing well enough with those educated whites. In 16, the polls grossly understated how Donald Trump was not only doing with working class, but also with those who did have a college degree. And because he still was at like 46, 45% in the Twin City suburbs, that's why he almost carried the state. If he could get a little bit higher and hold off any other like loss in the Twin City burbs while doing significantly better with non-college voters and running it up, maybe even carrying places like Olmsted County. You'd have to carry Olmsted. If he could do that, then you're looking at a different race. All right. Then you're looking at a different race. And maybe he could. If the bottom falls out from beneath Harris in the last 2 weeks of this thing, folks, if we're at October 15th and Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania and it's looking like Wisconsin, you get your normal polls doing, Harris plus sixes, but most people are seeing a tight race with maybe Trump, tied or having an advantage. But he's ahead in Pennsylvania. Then the truth be told, he's probably going to carry all three of them because that's the way these states poll versus how they vote. And people, it's like, I swear, it's so frustrating. It's like it's their first election. And they got used to him polling well with the Republican favored response bias because Biden was senile. They got used to that. And they forgot how it usually is in a normal political environment, which is sad that it is the normal one. It's not normal at all. There's nothing normal about it. It's media-driven bullshit. And it's sad that they won't just let us conduct an election, a serious election in this country. It's sad. And I also have a very long answer to a very short question, but I thought, I'd tell you that. And Jen Lavallee, I don't know if that's more French or not. How's the Senate looking for Republicans? Dang it, drop some. Jen, I got to be honest with you. It's not looking as good as it should be looking. There is some light here for Republicans, some very good news for Republicans, and that is that Dave McCormick has closed the gap significantly with Bob Casey. And I'm at the point now where if Trump wins the state of Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick will also win the state and Bob Casey will lose. All right, Dave McCormick has done a good job. That's because he has people like Sean Parnell who has his back. They have listened. By the way, did you see the press release on food freedom by Dave McCormick? They have listened to Robert and I and others who made good suggestions or whatever you want to say. I mean, the bottom line is he had an image problem. He had to combat, and he has now done that. So, yeah, there it is. All right. So, oh, sheesh, I still have that one thing up there, Roro's thing. Hey, Rich. Firstly, the team's leadership, a bunch of goddamn cowards. Secondly, thoughts on the alleged chemical attack on the rally in Tucson. Yeah, listen, like I said before, I'm going to take the second one first. Because I think the first one is just so self-evident. They're cowards. They caved. Nothing else needs to be said about that. It's disgusting. But actually, I do have something more I want to say about it. Let me take the sec. I think this is why I made a big deal trying to explain to people, like, if you don't realize this is like you're at war, then you need to realize it soon. They're going to try to kill you people. I'm sorry, but it's true. They're going to try to kill you people. Like, I am not at all surprised. I have been, I don't want to say these things publicly, but like Sean and I and others I've spoken to, we have talked long and hard about this stuff. Like, it is only a matter of time. They can't kill him. They're going to try to do things to his supporters. I'm surprised it took this long. I wouldn't be shocked if somebody dropped like it. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to mention anything specifically, but I am surprised that there isn't something worse that has been released at a Trump rally already. They're worried, as I just read in this Politico article on your screen, they're worried that they're about to get Hillary Clinton 2.0'd, and they're prepared to go to extreme measures. This is the world we're living in. It's terrifying. All right. On the first thing, they are cowardly, but they honestly they're indicative of the problem we have in American society. Leaders of all stripes and in all spaces are not representative of the people. And this small population that holds all the levers of power and influence rig everything and handicap everything so they can continue to go on and be unrepresentative. That will only last for so long. And eventually, our society will break. We are not special in that sense. We are not going to be different than the rest of human history. If they do not learn soon, or if they are not defeated, soundly defeated, because I really do still believe that that is the best weapon against them, is the system itself. If they are not rejected, but Americans, they got to wake up and see what's going on. I'm not talking about 51%, like, and that, of course, that's enough, and that'll get you there. But like, a massive number of people are going to have to realize and wake up. They're going to have to realize that they are being lied to, they are being used, they are being manipulated, because they're going to end up slaves. They're going to have loved ones who are going to be hurt and killed, imprisoned, killed, beaten. That's where this road leads. Which is why it's like these people, the election mafia, as we refer to them as, aren't you at all considering what your shoddy job may do to your own side, the side you're trying to appease and gin up? If and when it's not enough, what do you think they're going to do to you for once again lying and failing them? Lying to and failing them. Think eventually they're going to grab you by your knickers, hang you upside down? Maybe you'll end up like Benito Mussolini. Think you're above it? You're going to hide in your cubicle at the New York Times? Good luck. Don't wear your Nikes that day. Don't wear your new Jordans. You'll end up walking home barefoot if you can walk at all. Rich, I live in a very Dem enclave and work in a heavily minority part of New York City. I just don't see any effect from the debate. I hear people talk and all they talk about is biased moderators and cats and dogs. Yeah, Jonathan. Again, I really do believe there is a heavy response bias out there. Oh, 1 second. Oh, crap. Oh, what am I doing? I'm writing the wrong thing. It's 2:10. Shit. All right. I'll just put it up on locals. Oh, my God. I forgot the graphic for the debate. The undecideds. I'll put it up on locals. I promise. How could I have forgotten this? I myself I still believe and I maintain he should not have done the debate, Trump. He should have done what I told him to do. Refuse to debate her on the grounds that she is illegitimate, she is a usurper, and he is standing up for the 15 million voters who they have disenfranchised. That was the rock star move. That was the politically smart move. Instead, he gave them another response bias environment, and we're going to have to wait weeks again for it to calm down. And hopefully, if you're a Trump supporter, it calms down in his favor. Because these things can manifest into reality, and that's the danger. He's got to smarten up, man. There's certain things that concern me about Trump he doesn't appear to have learned. And his team wants to run around and point their fingers. It's your damn fault. I object. I object. I object. I object. When a candidate does something stupid, sometimes you have to throw yourself in front of the train. When they're preparing to do something stupid anyway. And I got to tell you, I mean, I've been in a lot of heavily Democratic areas in these like very high interest zones, let's call them, because they may foreshadow something. And I know what you're talking about. I do. Good comment. Jim Yoder, during the offseason, you and maybe some other good pollsters like Mark Mitchell should create some polling courses to sell on Udemy. Train up the next gen of pollsters and make some aid income. Side income. That's not a bad idea, Jim. I have thought about doing something like that for a long time, actually. Only I've even thought about putting like just short clips on YouTube for guys, for like you guys who are members, new subscribers. By the way, like Samuel, who subscribed earlier, and I just saw that. Don't forget, guys, election coverage is a subscriber-only thing. All right? So keep that in mind. There will be not just election night, but a series of other things that will only be for local supporters and YouTube members. All right. So what I'm telling you is go to locals and sign up. And because locals still is the best place, you're just gonna get stuff that even YouTubers aren't gonna get. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. Like a video the other day after the fire, the election modeling thing. I can't upload that to YouTube community. So you're gonna get more value if you sign up on locals. I'm just being honest with you guys, as I always try to be. Um, Seems like she knows PA is gone, so she's trying to sweep the Sun Belt. Just a thought exercise. But if you were the Harris campaign, what is your most realistic 270 path where you campaign and spend? You got to hold Minnesota and Virginia, of course, Maine, of course, New Hampshire, of course. I'm very skeptical on all four and a statewide level, except for Maine. I do think Harris is so uniquely weak among white working class. She could lose the state of Maine, and it would be very difficult to poll and foresee beforehand. All right, that's number one. Here's Roro again. Give me the Doritos, Roro. I'll open them for you, but it's going to cost you. Can I get a big huggy? Oh, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you too. I love my Roros. I love him. Did I sing? Sing. I love my little Roros. Yep. All right. Most realistic path, I would say, honestly, I don't believe these like maps with like, oh, she's going to hold Michigan and then do this and then do that. It could happen. It could happen this year again for the first time since Michael Dukakis with Wisconsin in '88. But they tend to vote all in the same direction. Damn polls be damned. And you will go and look back at the history of things, and you will see that the polls did not suggest that. And all of the models would have like Hillary or Biden winning this state. Maybe Trump. It's a toss up here. Maybe Trump might carry this state. At the end of the day, they vote the same way. Mitt Romney thought he could pluck away Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. He did none of them. Pennsylvania voted to the right of Wisconsin that year. So I think that honestly, she's got to pluck away Georgia and she's going to try for North Carolina. I just don't see it, guys. I don't. But Georgia, I think, is sufficiently corrupt that it is possible. And maybe a squeaker in Arizona. Maybe. And then she gets a Rust Belt state. But she really only has one path. Because I do feel like Pennsylvania, everyone thinks Pennsylvania's gone for Harris. Or not gone, but everyone knows she's down. I'm going to say this again. She is down in Pennsylvania. The New York Times poll is wrong. Very wrong. Her own campaign has her down in Pennsylvania. The Trump campaign has her down in Pennsylvania. Pollsters who know how to poll the state have her down in Pennsylvania. She is down in Pennsylvania. I've seen super PAC polling. I've seen campaign polling. I've seen private group polling. She is down in Pennsylvania. So that means she would have to hold Michigan and pluck off a Rust Belt state. A Sun Belt state. Georgia probably being the easiest. Let's not forget, folks. Let's not forget. She has a narrower path because the census had changed the Electoral College allocation. We keep forgetting this. And we're all having this conversation in the context that it's still 2020, that it's still 2016. It's not. It is easier for the Republican nominee to win the presidency now, post 2020 census, than it was in 2020 or 2016 or 2012 or 2008 or 2004 for that matter. It is easier. It's the easiest it's been. He can lose Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, but win Wisconsin and win. He could lose the Sun Belts I just mentioned, lose Wisconsin and Michigan, but carry Pennsylvania and win. He has many paths, which is why they're trying to upset the apple cart again. I'm trying to explain to you. They're trying to upset the map with this story about Mark Robinson with this, and they're pushing the concept that this time, one and only time in history, reverse coattails is going to be a thing. That's what they're trying to do. Why? Because she's down in Pennsylvania. All right. Good questions today, guys. Yeah. Join channel and vote, vote, vote. I hear that. It's acknowledged that the GOP down ballot is a drag on Trump, but with Kamala underperforming past candidates, could she be a drag on Democrats down ballot? I mean, so far, we're just not seeing it. So far, Republicans suck. Non-Trump Republicans suck. Which makes me circle back to the Senate question. I mean, it's not looking as good. You got McCormick doing better than expected. Oh, the race in Wisconsin is tightening and quickly. Last 5 polls in the Senate race in Wisconsin, despite what the presidential race has shown that that race is now within the sampling era. And Tammy is no joke. So the fact that Hovda is that close to Baldwin is really something else. Tester, I don't know. Something in my brain is telling me Tester is going to be hard. I wish I could poll it myself. The last time we polled the state of Montana was in 2018, and it was John Tester against Matt Rosendale. We freaking nailed it. Tester by 2, and it was like 2.2, and that's what he won by. And it was nailed it. But we haven't polled it ever since. It's changing state, So, I mean, we'll have to see. But right now, there's no evidence that the only evidence of the Democratic nominee hurting the Democrats down ballot came after the debate with Joe Biden. Preach it, brother. I'm a preaching, William. Amen. What makes you think Nevada will be swinging more to the right than Arizona in the future? 2020 shenanigans with mail-in ballots for all registered voters here seem like it's ripe for fraud in addition to illegals voting. There was a purge. That's one. The voter registration trends in both states clearly are favoring Republicans. It's just more pronounced in Nevada. Also, because don't look at the numbers, look at the percentages and share overall. And then also, if you look at the state of Nevada, how it's voted against the nation overall, it has voted more to the right than the national vote overall than Arizona. And that's been going on for years now. Even when the Democratic candidate won either presidential races or statewide Senate races, even when it was still a more pronounced rightward shift than Arizona, than Georgia, than North Carolina. There's no other battleground state that voted to the right of versus the juxtaposed to the national swing than Nevada. Out in the battleground states, there's no other state. It is the top one. And then if you add all the rest of the states, it's actually California, which voted to the right. I know that's crazy, right? But it's true. Nate Silver says, don't look at crosstabs. Nate Silver will be looking and showing you crosstabs to debunk a poll he doesn't like in a day. Watch. Within 24 to 48 hours, Nate Silver will pluck out something he doesn't like from crosstabs. Let's say Atlas releases polling in the battleground states. I don't know why it's not out yet because I do know a little bit about just from what he had said, public statements, reading in between the lines of what he said, he has Trump up in the battleground states. I don't know why it's not released yet, but I don't know if there's a change since then, since he made those comments. But let's say they come out and they show very different results in the battleground states and some of his favorite pollsters. He will go into the crosstabs, he will find something he doesn't like, and he will cite it. There is an argument about not crosstab diving. However, there's a difference between crosstab diving and using crosstabs to identify something incorrect, an artifact with the poll itself. And there's a very different thing. So don't look at crosstabs. Don't look at crosstabs. Don't look at it's too simple. It is not legit. What's up, buddy? What's up, buddy? Oh, yeah? Well, Daddy's still doing work for a bit. Can you give me just a few more minutes? I'm almost done. All right? Where's your mother? Yeah, I had some pretzels up here, buddy, but I don't know where they are. Hold on one second. I'll ask mommy. There you go. Mommy's coming. She's gonna get it for you, but you could still hang out with Daddy. I like it when you hang out in Daddy's office. Yeah, I know. He's like, but I want some stuff. So just remember, there's a difference between like crosstab diving for the sake of like unskewing or like obsessing over subgroups. And remember, sampling errors for subgroups are higher. So that's one of the reasons why most people caution you against doing that. However, When you go into the Quinnipiac poll and you see that disparity with whites and seniors, you know exactly that the poll has it's an artifact of the poll itself. And, this is used to identify whether a poll was conducted, I don't want to say legitimately, but whether a poll was conducted soundly. All right. So he's full of shit. He doesn't want you to go into the crosstabs and see significant problems indicating response biases and likely polling errors in the future. He doesn't want you to see that. Okay. What do you think of more states like Maine and Nebraska for the presidential race, or state electoral college for statewide races? I have kicked this idea around, actually. Maybe this is something we should do in a thought exercise, and I would show you by congressional district what the electoral college would look like if we did that. I think there may come a time when it would be the wiser idea, but it would not have popular opinion. And that's a problem, because the electoral college was implemented so we wouldn't rip each other apart. So the tyranny of the majority would not rip the country apart. And it's very simple. For big states, who didn't give their citizens a right to vote on things like illegal immigration, very, very, very simple for them to game and unduly influence the system, basically rig it and hijack the system. And that's why the Electoral College was put in place. However, it may not be enough. I don't know yet. I have thought about this. It would favor Republicans, by the way, in most cases, not all, in most. And actually, things are changing, so you could end up with it favoring Democrats soon, but we'll see. Do you know what Reagan's polls were like in '84? I only found one, and I was only 13 then, and there were any normally blue states that you see possible. Listen, I do think that New York and New Jersey are probably going to be closer than they usually are. I just don't know. The machines in those states are so powerful. They will use the black population in like Asbury Park or Ocean Grove or Bergen County. They will rob New Jersey like they robbed it from Citarelli. And anyone who says otherwise can kiss my rosy red Italian ass. All right. Atlantic City is a cesspool of voter fraud and always has been. It's just, he would have to win by such a large margin it would overcome it. I don't know. I think it's fair to call Virginia a blue state. I do. You all right, Winston? Come here, Winston. I heard you. Come here, buddy. Sit with Daddy. I know. I'm almost done. Stay with Daddy. I think it's fair to call Virginia a blue state now. And if that state goes or is very close, then she's cooked. Oregon is actually closer than it should be too. 4 points. Something wrong. All right, something wrong there. Am I worried about fraud? I'm always worried about fraud. Listen, before Trump was going to win by a margin outside the margin of fraud, there was just no way Democrats would be able to pack that many ballots. Connecticut, by the way, David, you're right. Peppers, Connecticut could be a state that Republicans could make real gains in the future with the right effort, but they're stupid. Republicans are stupid. There's a ton of white working class in Connecticut. Actually won some specials there and some like local races there on accident. Not because they're so good at their job. They're mentally, you know what? They're not good at it at all. It was an accident. They won white working class areas that have been ancestral Democratic areas for decades. And then they let it go. David, they let it go. That's how stupid they are. They let it go. They thought, oh, they're just going to vote for me anyway. Nah. Am I seeing the new movie Vindicating Trump? I've been invited to a lot of these. Why does that sound familiar? First grade party. Why does your social profile sound familiar? I feel like I recognize you. Uh-oh. Why do I know first? Do you do like children's things or something? I'm serious. Children's books, something like that? I feel like I recognize your channel or like your user profile. Anyway, I don't know. Tell me if I'm right. Yeah, I mean, David's right. I was just reading his message in response to that. They Connecticut Republicans hate Trumpism. So, like, they dropped the ball. They're like Vermont Republicans, not as bad, but pretty bad, Yeah, right. They're dominated. The California Republican Party, David, you're right. Totally dominated by Bushies. The Northeast is, though, David. Where is Bush headquarters really? It ain't in Texas, folks. It's in Maine. The not second congressional district, the first congressional district, the bougie area of Maine. All right. Am I seeing the movie Vindicating Trump? I've been invited to a couple of these things. I don't usually go first grade party because I don't like to be seen with like partisan people, and party people, partisan people. I want to remain impartial, and I don't want them to think I'm like their guy or something. So I often don't go. I get these, I got my Secret Service vet from President Trump, and I can go to Mar-a-Lago. I've been through all that. I don't want to, I think it's important for somebody in my position not to have that incestuous relationship. Now, that's not saying if I saw the guy, I'm going to walk past him, If I see Dinesh, I know Dinesh. I'm going to shake him hand and ask him how he's been. How's your wife? Wonderful woman, et cetera, et cetera. But I just don't want to be part of the clique. And I know that probably is going to hurt. That statement's probably going to hurt me, but it's the truth. All right, I've been playing around with the new swingometer. Oh, from the Hill, based on demographics. I keep finding Trump with all of the Sun and Rust Belt states at 312. Your opinion of the new site? I think it's super cool, Thomas. If you guys don't know what Thomas is talking about, you guys should go check out the swingometer. It's super cool. And the reason you keep coming to 312 is because of what I have been telling you. These models that are like 286, 287, they will all swing in listen, the most likely outcome is that if Trump wins, he's going to win with 312. That is the most likely outcome. When I said Trump was going to end up with over 300 electoral votes and in 2016, that was based on modeling and the model being not poll heavy or poll reliant like all these other models are, but based on actual variables that dictate the election outcomes and how voter preference actually works. These ethnicities, if they vote the same way, if they vote a certain way in Pennsylvania, they will vote the same way in Wisconsin. And so all of them will end up with the same winner typically. That is why. Now, maybe one gets plucked away this time, maybe, but I really doubt, folks, that the winner is going to win one out of the three of those states. So you end up with 312 because the demographics dictate who win those states. And if he is doing that well with those demographics, then he's going to win all of those states. All right. I mean, that's just the way it works. I didn't make up the rules. Bush played hard for Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. He played so hard for them and Michigan, but not as much. And especially in his reelection campaign, he thought, I'm plucking off Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. It came down to a few thousand votes, but in the end, it still voted like Michigan. The both of them. Biden, he nearly lost Wisconsin, even with all of those indefinitely confined ballots being stuffed into the box improperly. But nevertheless, it still came down to a few thousand votes, and he won all three of them. Donald Trump. Yay, won Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, actually kind of handily. Michigan was real close, 10,000 votes. But even though it was only 10,000 votes, he still won all three. So that's why your swingometer keeps coming up like that, because that's the history. Minnesota, I already brought up, so the popular vote would have to be like Trump +3 to win Minnesota. I really think it would have to be like 2.5, 3. Actually, maybe not. Honestly, that's not true. There's an argument that we're like 2 points off from where we were in 16. And even some arguing we're like 2 points off from the baseline in 2020. I don't buy that. If she wins by 2 points, she loses. That's in my mind. I don't see again how she would do that and win. She's not going to win enough working whites, working class in general, not even whites. But let's say, if it was Trump +1 to Harris +1, you're in the range of her losing Minnesota. GOP screwed their voter base on the SAVE Act. That's why we didn't get as much time to talk about it as I would have liked to. I went 30 minutes over because I wanted to finish your questions. These freaking idiots don't want to win. They would rather, it's the same thing like North Carolina, guys. They would rather lose to a certain person than win with Trump or a Trumpy person. This party's got a problem Democrats do not have. If they don't fix it, they're their own worst nightmare. They should all be winning this going away. Trump down ballot. They should be, the country is in such a bad position. The country trusts them on all the key top issues. They should be winning this going away. Response bias or no response bias. You should see the makings of a Republican landslide right now. And you don't. All right. With that in mind, I guess it is time to kick rocks. All right. Don't forget, if you like the video, don't forget to like it and share it far and wide. All right. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anybody on locals that might have added. Nope. Senate questions. We have to think about, regretfully, we have to think about Republicans have to think about a life after Trump. And absolutely. Yeah, why do second-gen Americans become more conservative, but Scandinavians are holding on to their commie views? That's a great question. I'm not sure I honestly can give you the answer here. It's their historical nature. They're isolated there. In Minnesota, Democrats, the state, broke away from the National Party, so they do a very good job being separate. It's a lot going in. That's a great question. There's a lot going into that. That Bartlett pear looks delicious. Is there any more? Man, I love me my fall pears and apples. And how do we know that Harris must win the popular vote by at least 3? That's an entire new show. And actually, we need to do that show. We need to do that show. Yeah. We need to do that. That's a great locals. Sydney, that's a really good question. And there's no firm agreement on it the way there used to be. It was called the Electoral College model that had a pretty good track record. They're not as bullish as the Slimer is on how much, because it's 2022. That's where they're changing their numbers from. And unfortunately for them, the electorate in a midterm is not the same as a presidential electorate. So a lot of that is being overstated. That's an entire episode, and it's one we need to have. Great question, and I promise we'll get to it. All right? Don't forget, if you like the video, share it far and wide. The link to the public polling project is in the description. We need to get back out in the field. Rust Belt, national, Rust Belt, national. Let's do this. All right? Share it far and wide. Again, remember, election-related videos, which are going to be before the election, during the election, after the election, are supporter only. So sign up on locals. Yeah, you will get it if you're a member on YouTube too. You will. But at some point, you may want to think about using the YouTube code I gave out to get on subscribe. It basically takes off how much you spent on signing up recently to YouTube to get on the locals, because you're going to get more value out of locals. I'm telling you, you are. Thank you to Freedom Gold USA as always, the Wellness Company as always. Remember, advertisers and algorithms, so don't forget to share, like, subscribe. Everybody have a safe weekend. None but love for you. We see you on Monday. What are the odds? 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss it. All right. Deuces. Give me a Bartlett pear, woman. Let me get a Bartlett pear. No. I'm going to get a Bartlett pear, guys.